Hi everybody, and thank you for joining us today for the sixth of our roundtables. My name is Doug. I'm one of the co-founders of Intelligent People. If you don't know us, we're a specialist product recruitment company with close to 20 years experience recruiting product talent up to board level. We provide permanent and interim services, both contingency and executive search, and roles include product ops, product design, and product management up to CPO level. Please do go to our website to see our services and current live roles. The theme today is product management trends for 2025, and we have three guest speakers who decided to spend their time with us. The first is Ed Biden. Ed is an interim CPTO at FYLD and the founder of Hustle Badger, which helps product leaders hit the ground running and make their teams more effective. Ed also runs a leading podcast, The Hustle Badger. The second speaker, Ed's chosen trend will be the rise of AI. Our second speaker is Martin Rover-Parkes, the CPO at Scrive, who provide digital signatures and IDs. And Martin's going to talk about new product management team structures. And our final speaker is Dave Cameron, the former CPO at Channel 4, who I'm sure everybody knows. And Dave's going to talk about maximizing value in the product. So moving on to the rise of AI, we should be getting some graphics coming onto the screen fairly shortly. Thank you. So for AI, the scope to increase adoption is really, really large. In the UK, adoption of AI has increased from 15.1% in 2020 to 22.7% in 2025, which is effectively a 50% increase. And it also leaves a massive 75% market potential available that's as yet untapped. They believe that by 2040, adoption will reach close to 35% and be flattening off, but that is still 1.3 million businesses that will be using AI as an integral part of what they do. Hi, Ed. Pleased to meet you.
Hi, Doug. Thanks for having me here.
Not at all. If you'd like to maybe give us a quick intro.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for introducing me. But as you mentioned, I'm currently a fractional and interim CPO. I'm working for Field, the construction tech business at the moment. I've previously held product leadership roles at companies like Rocket Internet, Depop, FutureLearn, and Job and Talent. And about 2 years ago, I set up Hustle Badger, which is an online training business which helps product managers find new jobs, settle into new roles, and get the best out of their teams.
Great. So you're looking about the rise of AI in product management, Ed?
I am, yes. I mean, this is something that comes up a lot when I'm speaking to product managers as just one of their top, I guess, anxieties or concerns at the moment. Like, everyone knows that this is a big trend, and they're nervous about what this could mean for themselves personally, as well as what it could mean for their businesses. And I think exacerbating that anxiety is the fact that there's a lot of unknown around, what is the future going to hold, right? I think this is as big a paradigm shift as the move to mobile, or going back even further, the initial shift to digital. But those felt like they were somehow, you could understand what that was going to do to the world in a way that with AI, I think few people really understand the technology in the same way, and therefore the implications.
Yeah, that's interesting, because we obviously do a lot of roles, and the AI is, it's a big buzzword at the moment, but I can't really see it replacing some of the ideation. What's the main anxiety? Is it that the role of product will be just automated, and the bots and the such like will create new products? Or
No, I don't think it's that. I think it's when you get these kind of really big shifts that causes a lot of disruption. And you saw kind of mobile, when Uber came along, that kind of completely changed how people got taxis. You saw when the internet came out, classified advertising went online, that completely changed how, the viability of regional newspapers. So it's likely that there will be some classes of business that are no longer viable, that will shift in fundamental ways. And similarly, I think so that's kind of the business level risk, and people are worried even at digital companies. Well, what if a new AI based competitor comes along and completely, pulls the rug out from underneath us? But on an individual level, a lot of PMs I'm speaking to, I think there's this sense that, oh, if I'm not kind of completely up to date with the latest tools, then someone, some 23-year-old who's been prompt engineering for, 5 years, some impossible time frame is going to come along and be able to do 3 times what I can do in half the time. And so I think it's that kind of like dual sense of, personally, do I really understand just the day-to-day, what kind of the latest AI tools can do? And then what does this mean for my company?
Yeah, interesting. What is there anything you sort of say to help sort of mitigate that, or calm people down a little, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's an anxiety I share myself, right? And I think there's different ways of thinking about this. So, like, firstly, I think that like the news cycle that we have at the moment with social media and 24/7 news can make this feel like it's a trend that's happening very, very quickly. But actually, if you look at sort of the wider picture, if you take that step back and have a broader perspective, this is a trend that's going to play out over a number of years. And you can see that from the chart that you showed. This is the number of companies that are actually deeply incorporating AI into their core services and their core products. That's going to trickle up quite dramatically, but quite dramatically over a number of years. So this isn't something that you need to fix like today, but it is something that you're going to have to think about as part of your skill set, part of your knowledge over the next few years. So I think one of the things I kind of get people to think about is, what is their budget learning about this? And how much time do they want to invest? Not sort of immediately, but, is this a kind of, oh, we're going to spend 2 hours a month on it? Or is this going to be like 2 days a month on it, sort of thing? Everyone's going to have a different sense of how big a trend do they think this is. That people might not share my kind of perception of how big it is, and therefore how important and how much time they want to put in, learning about it. So I think that's a good way of thinking about it. Is just, if you believe it's the future, what are you going to do to make sure that you stay abreast of it? But you're not going to be able to cover everything. So don't try and stay ahead of everything. Just think about what is a sensible investment and how do you spend that time?
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And there's obvious industries I can see that AI will disrupt. I mean, and we see it already in clinical trials. We're going to see it, I think, in legal documentation. There's a couple of businesses that have set up. Robin AI, I think, are in, contracts and the such, like, where they use AI to effectively remove reading time, etc. But I've always thought of this as more of an opportunity for product managers. Like, it's new tech that's coming out, and product managers have had to deal with, they've been using algorithms for learning and localization and personalization for a while. So I guess maybe naively, I've just always assumed it's a great opportunity for the product industry. And I can understand the threat of, okay, we may have an AI-driven competitor beats our business, but I've never really thought about it replacing the product managers. Do you think that could happen? I just can't see that.
No, I don't see that happening at all. Not as a kind of a class of expertise or as a role. I think if anything, you're going to see a lot of other roles become much more like product management. Because what is product management? Essentially, it's about having a mix of strategic, analytical skills and human empathy, and being able to use that to find customer problems, solve them, and deliver business results. And if you look at the experts that we work most closely with, designers, engineers, actually it's those roles that feel more at risk, and more of those are going to get automated or supplemented by AI. And therefore those roles, like engineers, are going to be great engineers, not by writing loads of code, but by really understanding the customer problems and the business goals, and being able to like directly think about how they solve that. So I see more people getting into product management like roles rather than product management disappearing.
Yeah, I mean, I've always, again, with all automation, it can affect roles, but it typically lets people do more. I would have thought this would make product managers more effective. They can do more in their day. They can release more. So are there any sort of on courses, though? Are there any particular courses you recommend, or that Hasselblatt runs at all, or is there anything?
I think there are some courses out there, but I think the most valuable thing that you can do is go and start using the AI out there. And that means, both like mindfully using the tech products that are starting to incorporate it, because it's starting to pop up in, everything from Miro and spreadsheets and all the rest of it. And I almost, I see all these pop-ups of like, oh, new feature, blah, blah, blah. And I get so many of them that I'm tempted just to swipe them away. And actually, I think you need to take that kind of 2 minutes just to really understand what they're doing and, go back to your kind of junior PM days and really critique it and understand what are they trying to do? What is the problem they're solving? And how well are they actually using the technology, but also just get inspired by what people can do. And then I think you can as well. I mean, you're right. It's not just a scary time. It's a hugely exciting time as well. And so this is a time when, with very little technical knowledge, you can go and record a song and you can get ChatGPT to help you with the lyrics, or you can go and code a little app and get, ChatGPT to teach you how to code or what services you need to plug together. So there's a lot you can do creatively as well. And I think one of the best things you can do is set yourself a little project and make it something sort of relatively modest to start with, but then go and spend a few hours and see how far you get with that. And whether that's augmenting a spreadsheet or making your own song or whatever.
Yeah, there's lots of people trying it. I know at the moment, AI makes my day less effective because LinkedIn keeps suggesting messages that I have to delete and then put something more meaningful in. But I guess that's just my little world. So, and what about in terms of moving away, I guess, from the sort of the threat and anxiety? What about where PMs are already using it? Can you expand on how people use it, where it's valuable, where it's effective?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting topic, because I think there are some sort of emerging use cases that are becoming fairly standardized. So a couple of really good ones, turning large amounts of qualitative data into like processing that or turning it into quantitative data. I think that's something that AI is turning out to be pretty good at. So you can feed it in lots of customer interviews and then get it to do the sentiment analysis on that fairly easily. You can do things like, when you are coming up with a plan, you can get it to almost act as a critic and sort of, ask it how you can make that argument stronger, ask it for perhaps some of the more, make sure you haven't overlooked some of the common solutions. I think where you can't do it, I think, I see a lot of people being like, oh yeah, I just use it to write your PIDs, use it to write your strategies. And like, that's kind of the core thinking that product managers are doing. And the results that you get from most LLMs are pretty generic. So if you want a very generic feature requirement or you want a very generic strategy, I mean, like, sure, do that. But for me, that's kind of missing the point. And I've heard it sometimes said, AI is really good for like the middle 60% of any task. So you have to do the first 20% to give it the brief. And then you have to do the final 20% to polish up the final result. But I think actually I'd weight that slightly differently. Like you need to do quite a lot of prompt design or setting the context, defining the problem to get really good results out of AI that way. And if you skip that, you're just going to get a garbage response. So I think there are some things it's really useful for, but there's also some things where I think it's tempting to use it, but it's actually counterproductive or just not a meaningful improvement on what you can do yourself.
Yeah, I think about things like innovation, etc. I mean, do you think, because for me, AI, it regurgitates what's already out there effectively. Do you think it will ever help with, because a lot of product roles we get these days, it's all about helping customers solve problems and finding stuff that's new, thinking of new ways to doing things. Do you think AI will be able to help with that at any point, or?
I think for ideation, for the creativity side, there are a couple of ways you can use it. So your creativity and the ideas that you come up with is usually driven a lot by what you've been exposed to and the references that you've got. And so if you're thinking about a particular problem, then asking an AI for like, what are the solutions? You're going to get fairly mainstream solutions there, but it can make sure that you haven't overlooked anything obvious that you should consider. I think the other way that you can use it is kind of expanding on a line of thought or on a hypothesis. So if you say like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, and actually the angle I want to take it in is to make it super fast, super responsive, super personalized, you can almost get it to come back to you with some ideas, and you can do follow-up questions. And that's pretty variable on the quality of output you get at the moment. Sometimes it can come up with some quite interesting things. And sometimes it comes back with like very, very generic stuff. And again, that typically depends on exactly how well you're briefing it to give you these kind of spiky answers, like very kind of like innovative answers, and how do you provide the examples and the references for that?
So what about 2025 and beyond then? How do you see that looking like, or the people you interview and coach, how do they see it?
Yeah, I think a couple of things here. So in terms of the PM role, I can see that a lot of these tools are going to become just part of the everyday workflow. So yeah, and to the point that it's almost not really worth worrying about or considering. Like, you use email, you use Google, you don't check if you're hiring people whether they know how to search for things on Google and how to structure the queries. Like, you're not going to have to check whether people have a basic understanding of ChatGPT or know how to use a smart AI assistant in Miro. That's just going to be kind of what everyone can do. And similarly, I think if you look at new technologies when they come in, people talk about, mobile transition, iPhones come out in 2008. Are we building mobile first, or this sort of thing? Very quickly, that just becomes the way that you build your business, right? Yep. So I don't think we're going to be talking about building AI products for very long. We'll talk about it in the transition period for 3, 4, 5 years, something like this. Beyond that, we're just going to be talking about building products, and people will naturally assume that includes what we call now AI capabilities. So I think there is going to be this trend of it. At the moment, it feels cutting edge and exciting and scary, but it's going to become much more mainstream.
Yeah. Where would you see? I mean, are there any industries you see where it will particularly lend itself? And I know, we've had a client that works in clinical trials, and we know large language models, it's a particular area. But are there any others that you feel lend themselves naturally, or where AI will be a natural sort of fit?
I'm sure you can go through industries and case by case look at ones that might be completely disrupted by AI. I think for me, it's more interesting to see that just everything's going to have this layer of AI on top of it, and that's particularly going to affect the way that we interact with products. So at the moment, we use very much graphical interfaces. Chatbots have come along as like the predominant way of using AI tools, but you're starting to see different ways of this being incorporated with some of the visual tools like Canva, Miro, Notion, even. Like, it's starting to get like just more integrated into the existing applications, and with the ability of AI to sort of convert text into video or photos or sound and all of the other combinations. What even is the right user interface, I think, is going to become a really interesting question going forwards.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. So how would you think the PM role will evolve with that in mind then? Do you see any sort of great revolution there, or?
I don't. I mean, the name for PMs might change, but I always think that, my career started out at McKinsey, and what I was doing there as a strategy consultant was sort of 80-90% what I do as a product manager. It was analyzing data, it was speaking to customers, it was understanding business problems, and it was then coordinating and aligning stakeholders. I think that mix of skills is going to be very valuable in the future. It's obviously going to be augmented across all the things that you do by AI, but I think that mix of sort of hard analysis and empathetic intelligence is going to remain valuable. Yeah. Might not be called product management, but I think we'll all still have jobs one way or another.
I've got to ask, what are you betting on? What do you think it's going to be called? Final question.
No idea. Maybe we're all PMs. We're all just prompt managers all the way down.
No, that's good. Ed, thank you very much for that. I think we've probably hit our time limit about now. So thank you very much for that. It's really, really insightful. And I hope to speak to you again soon.
Super. Thanks for having me, Doug.
Not a problem at all. Take care. Our next topic is going to be product management team structures with Martin Rover-Parkes from Scrive. Are you on screen, Martin? I think they were going to put a graphic in, but maybe we've missed that. Oh no, here we are. So we've got one of the roles that we've seen appear of late has been the fractional role, and a fractional is typically defined as a strategic role that works part-time. Trends are that 20% of global jobs will be replaced by automation by 2030, which will create a greater demand for flexible talent, and 72% of CEOs plan to increase their use of fractionals across different functions over the next year. But Martin, perhaps you'd like to introduce yourself and talk about your new product management team structures.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we could start with automation for my voice, so it would sound a little bit better. Great to be here. Thank you so much. Slight husky voice, bear with me. Hopefully it won't put you to sleep or you think that my voice is breaking. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Scrive, everything to do with digital identities and digital signatures. And I'm here today, to talk about team structures, what that looks like. Doug, looking at our discussion points, I think the first one was the economic climate, what that's going to look like in 2025 versus this year. I think fractional is a good segue in, because let's be honest, the climate's been rough, hasn't it, for the last 18 months or so?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, it's been brutal. I mean, we've been battered. Access to capital's been tough. The economic and the macro environments have been pretty brutal. But there ends the doom and the gloom, because my prediction and my view is the trend for 2025 and beyond is positive. Only this morning, actually, I was reading that for senior product leadership roles, openings have increased by 22% in the last couple of months. So I think that's a positive sign. And as I said, this access to capital is improving. It's still costly, but I don't know what you've all experienced, but I certainly remember over 15 years in product now, and I joined as a greenhorn, a junior product manager thrown into the deep end, and somehow 15 years later made it to CPO. But there was this drive for monstrous growth, wasn't there? We don't care about profitability. We don't care about anything other than growth, user numbers, market share, etc.
Yeah.
Well, that was kind of changed. That kind of changed, didn't it? And it was strict profitability.
Yeah, I think my view on it, a lot of companies, you sort of grew on the basis that if we grow, someone will buy us, or if we grow, we'll work out a way to monetize it. And there's still some companies out there like Twitter, they're still, they're hugely valued, but they're still trying to work out how to actually monetize. But they were working on the basis, if we get the users, someone will buy us, or we can float and kind of make money somehow. But over the last 18 months in particular, there's been businesses revalued. B2C has been hit very, very hard, and that's where we've seen a lot of sort of fractional roles. So, but with interest rates hopefully coming down, I think if they get down to the sort of 2% mark, from an investor's point of view, a 2% return isn't good enough for the pensions. So we have to start investing again, and I think everybody in tech is praying for that, really. So how do you think that will sort of affect, though, roles coming forward, team structures?
I think it's a golden era, and I don't say that lightly. I really believe it's a golden era. And what I mean by that is, let's leverage within the team structure the product management principles and learnings we've all had over the last 5-10 years. So let's leverage product designers, let's leverage product managers, let's leverage the power of product operations. That's only come about really in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Put those 3 new structures together, take the learnings of rapid growth and blend it with sensible, prudent focus on profitability as well as growth. And I think 2025 and beyond is going to look pretty exciting. And that's certainly the perception that we as a product function have to have with the CEOs and the boards. But I might be coming on to the next part already. So
yeah, I think, and well, look, it segues in nicely. I think the only caveat I'd say to sensible growth is investors need to be on board with that, and the investor community. Whilst they're the lifeblood of businesses, they can be quite knee jerk, if and they can be quite sentiment driven, I think. So I think if they can maybe be a bit more PE focused, private equity firms tend to look for 2 to 3 times growth over 5 to 10 years, as opposed to 20 times in 2 years. Maybe we need more of that kind of thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the team structures, the investment really needs to start now, ready for next year. So who are your product managers? What are they owning? Who are your product designers? And how are they supporting with that critical research, those prototypes, those mock-ups, that iteration? And depending on your organizational size, where are product operations coming in to make sure that the segue between product and revenue, product and engineering, and product and the rest of the organization is really effective? So Christmas is around the corner. There you go. I've said it early. I'm probably going to be sort of hung, drawn and quartered, and I can hear my other half in the other room going, he's mentioning Christmas already, but it is around the corner. So what better time than to put on the wish list for Christmas the team structure that you need?
I'm with you 100%. The more people hiring, the better it is. And I think product ops is an interesting one. It's a role that seemed to come into being, unfortunately, for some really good people, just about the time that the economy really sort of went into a headwind. So there's lots of people that went into product ops, some really good people in product ops, but it's one of the roles that either got pulled quite early, or people just decided to put the hiring on hold. So do you see that as being one of the roles that we'll see a lot more of in the future? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a massive believer in product operations, the impact that it makes on the quality that product managers can focus on, the proximity to customers, gearing up the whole machine to get the insights, closing the feedback loops, working closely with product marketing and revenue. Product management's been around for decades. Some say hundreds of years, but I think that's stretching it. But I'd certainly say 30, 40 years. I'm not quite sure Henry Ford, maybe he was an early innovator of product management, but certainly product management's grown, and the team and the specialisms and the skills have grown. And at one point we suddenly went, hang on a minute, how are we expecting a product manager to do and to be an expert in all of the data, all of the insights, the customer interviews, the market analysis, the competitor analysis, the pre-launch checklist, the post-launch checklist, the P&Ls in some case? This is impossible. So naturally a maturity has happened, and product ops, I think, is very exciting. If I could do my time again, I'd probably go more into product operations. So yeah.
Oh, that's good. And how do you see the perception of product management from the CEO and boards, sort of, for next year particularly?
Yeah, no, great question. And when we decided to tackle this one, Doug, I was like, I wonder if any of my previous or current investors and CEOs and that are listening in. But you know what? I'm not going to dodge the question. My view is it really depends on the CEO and the board. Are they product minded or not? Now, if you speak to all CEOs and all boards, they'll all tell you they're product minded. But then when you scratch below the surface, you actually realize this is more like a hippo, the highest paid person's opinion dictating the roadmap. Or actually, like when I joined Scribe, this is a CEO that knows the market enormously, but wants a product expert in place. And so and that's the same for the board. The board are going to be talking to other CEOs and other companies that they're involved with, and they're going to hear this big hype about product management, the silver bullet, the knight in shining armor. That's what you need. You need more product. But do they actually understand what terrain they're operating in? And what is needed in that organization can be different to other organizations. So it really means you've either got lots of work to do in educating and understanding what the CEO and the board's perception is, or you've got lots and lots and lots and lots of work to do to guide them. And if I was to just go a little further on that, it's up to you. And I've said this to juniors, to PMs, to seniors, to VPs. It's up to you to show the value, and it's up to you to show the power of product, and trust in yourself. If you're doing it right, the growth will come. It doesn't mean it's easy. Oh, trust me, there's been some rough rides.
Yeah.
But if you believe in it and you show the value, you're going to bring the CEO and the board on board.
That sounds good. So, and speaking of the CEO, CPO, and board, what about the CPO, CTO combining as a role? Do you see that as something? So we're seeing the rise of fractionals, and I'm not sure whether fractional is kind of here to stay, or whether it's a bit of a marriage of convenience for companies that want high skill but can't pay for it full time, and candidates who have mortgages to pay, etc. So I'm not sure how that will play out, but I have increasingly seen the rise of the CPTO.
Awesome questions. Right. So fractional, I was on the fence, and I'm leaning more towards fractional is going to stay. And if I was to summarize it really quickly, it's going to stay because the gig economy is going to stay. And what I think we're going to see is really talented PMs, senior PMs, CPOs, VPs that say, we want to make a difference, and we know that our experience in other businesses can help the one that I'm currently in. So why wouldn't you have a fractional CPO? Just like why wouldn't you have a fractional GP or a surgeon that says, actually, I still want to do surgery. I'm still a good cardiologist. I just want to do it at this hospital on a Monday and a Tuesday, and this hospital on a Wednesday and a Thursday, because it works better for me, and I've got different teams that I'm working around.
Yeah, I wonder. I think it's less of. I think if candidates could do that, and there were sufficient roles, I think they would.
Yeah.
I wonder about the jealous CEO though, who just want I mean, and we've seen it with Amazon. I want you back in the office, for reasons.
Yeah.
Are CEOs going to be comfortable thinking, well, I've got Martin for 1 day a week or 2 days a week, and then he's off doing that? Or are they going to think, no, I'm going to pay the extra money and I want him doing my stuff, and that's it?
Yeah.
I think that's the challenge, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I was speaking with a CEO the other week, just chatting product CXO to CXO.
Yeah.
And he said, well, when I hire a CPO, I've got to review them. I hope that they make an impact, but I've got a 6-month probation period where they've got to make an impact. So why not have a fractional one in to start with to get things going? And if it's working brilliantly, bring them on board more and more. But your other question, which was great, CPTO, my thoughts on that. Bear with me when I say I don't believe in it. I've said it straight. I hope I don't get lots of hate in LinkedIn or whatever, or on Instagram. Martin, you've said you don't believe in it. The CPTO role absolutely has a place. I think it's in smaller or cash-strapped organizations, or where the terrain says, actually, we need a person to do it all. But there is the bit that I don't believe in. There's the Achilles heel, someone to do it all. because the CPO has this wonderful blue UN peacekeeper hat on, where they're between the CRO and the commercial teams and the CTO and the engineering needs, and they're blending those together to deliver that strategic and commercial impact and aligning it with the CEO and the board. So it's, in my view, super important to have that independence. Now, my takeaway there is, if you're more technical, lean towards the engineering route. You're going to be happy there. If you're more commercial, have an amazing CTO, and they will actually in turn be grateful to have you. And that's at Scribe at the moment. Targa, he's a fantastic CTO, and I know that we lean into each other quite heavily.
Yeah, there's an argument as well that there is some of that a dynamic tension between product, as in, you know, if you have someone who's too technically minded, they're always thinking of the limitations of technology. And 100%. Actually, sometimes you need people to break that and just say, I don't care, you know, what the tech says it does. How do we make this happen?
100%. So I often define the product team are for the why, and the engineering team are for the how, but they're not mutually exclusive. The engineering team are going to have amazing insights of what the technology can do that maybe the product team haven't even thought of. Okay. And the product team are going to be thinking about commercial, competitor, user impact that maybe isn't quite ready for the technology. So that healthy marital tension almost between CPO and CTO, I think is absolutely critical.
Okay, that's great. So for you then, you think fractional is here to stay, and you think maybe next year we'll see the rise of product ops again?
100%. Fractional's here to stay. I think for the mobility of the workforce across Europe globally, and the need for organizations to attract talent, and something is better than nothing, get going. And woohoo to product ops for 25.
Brilliant. Martin, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
It's been great speaking with you. I'll speak to you again soon.
Take care.
Take care. So next up we have Dave Cameron, the former CPO of Channel 4. Dave will be talking about maximizing the value in the product. And again, we've got some graphics coming up. Thank you. The 6 most common ways to increase product value are typically seen as habitual usage, as network effects, so think product-led growth, Zoom, etc., personalization, stored value, continuous improvement, and integrated experience. So hopefully Dave will come back on screen, and we'll get talking. Hi Dave, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi Doug, how are you? Thanks very much for having me on here today. Introduce myself, yes. So I'm Dave Cameron. For those that don't know me, I was the Chief Product Officer at Channel 4 until recently, which is where I was responsible for the success and the growth of Channel 4 streaming as a platform. Before that, I spent too many years at Sky than I care to reveal here. But there I looked after a number of the core pay TV subscription products at Sky, Sky Plus, Sky Q, I was there for the launch of that, and Sky Go. And now I'm product consultant, fractional CPO, however you describe it, in the market. So I'm very pleased to hear about Martin's prediction of golden age and the continuing role of the fractional CPO, because that seems relevant at the moment. Also excited about product ops, but there we go.
It is. It's nice to have to speak to someone who's got a positive view on the economy as well, isn't it? So, but given where you've come from, maximizing value in the product must be close to your heart. So, would you like to give us your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hope I'm not meant to be the negative flip side to Martin's positive coin. I don't think that was the setup. But I think, I'll talk about, how myself and my teams have thought about value creation in what we've done in the roles that I've had. And I think for me, that has always been kind of when you're getting the product job right, you are finding the way to create solutions which are driving the right business outcomes, aligning business goals, and also fulfilling customer needs. And I think perhaps, because I've spent a lot of time in big places, mature organizations, if you like, that has always been, kind of the job to be done. It's like, how do you find the sweet spot and the solutions for those things? I guess it might be worth just sort of diving into, what do we mean when we say value? It's a very, we say it a lot, in all these sort of product conversations. But in a consumer business, I think it probably boils down to some terms that everyone is reasonably familiar with, things that will be your business performance KPIs that you are familiar with. So we're talking about growing revenue, we're talking about acquiring customers, we're talking about keeping those customers, we talk about retention, and we talk about customer lifetime value, like over the period that consumer is, has a relationship with you, what are they doing with you, how much value are you able to drive out of that relationship? And it's sort of in the service of these product metrics, if you like, that you should be describing your product strategy and the decisions that you're making in order to drive those forward. So, I tend to think of it kind of in three buckets, right? When I think about the value that we're trying to create. So customer acquisition, customer retention, and ARPU, driving up revenue from each of those. And depending on the kind of organization you are, the kind of business that you've set yourself up, and really what I mean by that is, are you a subscription business? Are you an advertising funded business? Are you a combination of the two? Some of the things that you will do in your product roadmap and strategy will be slightly, will flex, I think, depending on what you're trying to achieve and where you are in the life cycle. So like an example I might choose from that is, when we were building Sky Q, one of the things that we built was the ability to record 6 programs at the same time, right? And the reason that we did that was because that would be the best in the market. It's a bit like razor blades. It had the most razor blades on it, sort of thing. But that was because the promise that we wanted to go to market with was, this is the best TV experience you can buy. This has the most recordings you can get. And because the customer promise that we were creating was, it's the best thing you can get. Yeah. And the reason for that was because what we were trying to do was create a premium subscription service that people were actually going to sign up to quite a long and expensive contract about. Yeah. And so it was a thing that had curb appeal, if you like, if you think about it that way. But actually, we knew that not many people would use it. Yeah. So we didn't put much effort into the in-product customer experience because it was there for the point of sale. It wasn't there for the lifetime value. So I sort of highlight it as, it's an example of the kinds of things you do or do differently depending on, well, what's the value I'm trying to create? Where am I in my life cycle? What's important to me now, sort of thing, if that makes sense. And all of that should be reflected in your product strategy, which is obviously aligned to what is the business strategy right now.
Okay. Yeah, I like that, because I was thinking, I mean, you've come from a rapidly evolving but very, very competitive sector. And I'm always thinking, well, what are they going to do next? What's new? So, yeah, I like that. What about retention then? So you've got a best-in-class service. You've got people signed up. Where's the retention come in then? What are the steps?
Yes, I think in terms of retention, I guess there's, again, I think of that in a couple of different ways. And some of the tools and tactics, if you like, that you can use are the ones that were on the graphic at the beginning. And I might come back and talk about a couple of examples of those in a minute. It's how do you create a consumer experience that is delightful, that they want to use, that they want to come back for. And many of those things are tactics in that game. Yeah. Also, you need to think about, it is also important to think about perhaps the more mundane aspects of retention, by which I mean, are you checking for where your customers are falling out of their payment cycles? Are your retry periods, are they correct? You can actually make a great deal of headway and therefore value added back to the business just by checking that the bread and butter, if you like, is working. We've discovered this a number of times in terms of subscription, just by making sure that those things are working as most effectively as they can, you will be, you'll be adding to your customer lifecycle, your retention rates, all of those good things. It's not sexy product work. It's really important for adding value, right? And I think that's in terms of the business outcomes that you want to create. So it's working out how to balance, if you like, how much of my capacity, investment, engineering resource have I got? What are the most effective ways, if you like, for me to get to the business outcomes that I want? It could be through fixing some of the plumbing, if you like, or it could be actually by driving some of these experiences that I'm going to talk about in a sec, which drive that habitual use and those other aspects of consumer behavior. Yeah.
And you mentioned sort of experiences. What sort of experiences then? What are you?
Yeah, so I think, I'll just pick a few examples of that slide if I can. Habitual usage was the first one, right? And really all of us, we've always spent our time looking for this in all of the services that I've worked on. That's TV consumption or sports consumption or all of these other things, and often had the advantage that those were services that people wanted to come back to very regularly for what was on offer there. But sometimes the things that you can come across, and this is about by understanding your products and understanding your consumers, can surprise you. So the example I used to like to sort of bore my teams with probably and come back to was the New York Times crossword. So what the New York Times discovered at the point where they went behind the paywall, and they were watching what consumers were doing, and what they uncovered was that the consumers that was a sort of a characteristic, if you like, of consumers that were staying with them longest, and therefore they were getting the most value out of, was that a lot of them were coming and using the daily crossword. So they were coming for their regular daily fix, so it was a habit that they were forming. And what that meant was they would form the habit of using the service. They then would use more of the service, and that made them predisposed to, be happy to pay for it for longer. And so what they did, it's no surprise, acquisition of Wordle, expansion of puzzles and games, all of these kind of things is kind of born of that insight that they came off. And that's born of that understanding of what are our consumers doing, how are they interacting with our service, and how can we replicate, those things in terms of habitual usage that will come back to them more. So it's quite a powerful thing.
And what about driving up revenue then?
In terms of that in itself will drive revenue in the sense that the consumers will stay for longer. I think other things in terms of driving up revenue that are obviously important tactics are, well, how can I create newer services, if you like, that people will pay for more, but that's different pricing models, etc., etc. But actually, an example that I think at Sky, probably a Sky example in terms of, and I think it comes under the banner of continuous development as the sort of the tactic that was on that slide. We took a journey from a product that was Sky Plus to a product that was Sky Q, and then Sky have taken that on to a product that is Sky Glass. And over that, and each one of those steps was actually a huge amount of investment, and that's organizational change as well. If you think about, we talk about product, but there it was sales and marketing and operations. It was the organization. It's quite a big organization. So why did we do that? Because back at the inception of Q, Sky Plus was the best premium TV product in the market, hands down. But we could see, things were changing. We could see consumer trends or technology trends, in the sense of the competition was changing. People were increasingly, Netflix was growing in popularity, Amazon Fire was becoming an alternative. So you could see from these bigger competitors that they were bringing things to market that was changing the landscape. But also because I guess the market was saturated, if you like, in terms of growth, then you're at the point of like, well, how can I drive more revenue out of the consumers that I have? And so Sky Q was a solution to partially the competitive landscape, but also in order to begin to drive more revenue out of kind of the same thing, which is watching television, by creating a product which was able to be sold and packaged slightly differently, created solutions to problems that consumers had with the current, and really took a step on and began to change the cost to serve of that model as well, right? So, and then Glass changed that again. Again, it's sort of the competition and the consumer behavior of app-centric consumption that was kind of reaching a peak, and so that sort of once again changed how it should work, but also drove down the cost of the product. So there, on a regular basis, there's an innovation, if you like, on a regular timescale to re-energize the product from the consumer perspective, but also to react to what's happening in the market.
Yeah. Okay. So what would you? Yeah. How do you balance those then? The sort of the products and business strategy. How do you get that all sort of balanced together? And
well, I think one way to I think there's also the aspect of your portfolio, right? Your product portfolio. That's a way to think about where you are in terms of I guess the life cycle of anything that you're doing. So I think it's sensible to have almost a portfolio mix to some extent, and understanding where your products are in the life cycle. So you could be, as Ed was talking about, right? I think his comments around, the exploratory work that's kind of going on in the field of AI and trying to work out how are we going to leverage the new technology in order to drive new products. So that's a new product line. You should be investing some time, if you like, in working those things out. And to the point that he made, it sort of depends on the belief of your organization as to how big or not big any particular innovation is going to be. think, my personal view is that one's probably going to shift the dial. So that's, people need to be spending some time in working out how they can leverage that. But that's in the new product line. You've got product market fit there. And then in terms of, you may be at the point where you found product market fit on some of your lines, and now you're in the happy position that you're growing those. Yeah. So you should be investing, I would say, more of your capacity and your effort into the rapid growth of those once you've found that thing. If your products are more mature, reflecting back to a Sky Plus thing, that's not a product or type of product that you want to invest very much more in anymore. It's like think of it as your cash cow, which is a terrible phrase, but you know what I mean. It's going to generate revenue for you, but you don't have to put much effort into that from a product and development perspective. And so sort of thinking about your portfolio and how you keep that balance across thing is really taking a future-centric view of revenue generation, if you like, and how you're going to continue to keep that revenue pipeline going based on what you can see in the market, based on what you can see your consumers are currently doing, and where you kind of want to be. And of course, it's always important in that, which we always forget, is to prune, is to take out the things that aren't working, is to spend the time to take out the products that aren't being used, or perhaps end of life, because that's going to drive down, the costs that you're spending across the whole thing.
Yeah, the sunsetting process, as it's called, I think.
Yes, exactly.
So, okay. So how do you choose which align to your sort of strategy life cycle? I think that's the next bit we've got, isn't it?
Well, in terms of how do you choose? I think this is the thing with product management. There are a lot of choices, right? And to me, it feels like, where are you at as an organization? What's the cycle that you're in? I've talked a little bit about some of the situations that Sky was in, but I guess really it's like, if you're new and you just need to grow for whatever reasons that you as the organization feel that you need to grow, you're probably going to lean into those acquisition tactics, if you like. You're going to try and drive that customer base up. You're going to drive, because actually that's then beneficial for the network effects thing that we've talked about on there, and those kind of other things. You might be in a phase where what you want to do is you want to grow customers, consumers, eyeballs, and that's going to leverage that. But if you have, if you sort of, if that's not where you're not seeing that rapid growth anymore, what you're trying now to do is, it's about aligning, that middle phase, if you like, of the maturity of growth into driving up ARPU and driving up revenue and making the choices about that. So really, it depends. Where are you as a business? What are your sales team saying, your marketing team saying? It's sort of understanding collectively and aligning across your business strategy, and then having a product strategy that reflects that in that period.
Yeah. So what do you see sort of? So you've obviously done a lot of this value creation life cycle, and you've obviously done a lot of this sort of new product innovation and then sunsetting. What sort of impacts are you likely to create and see while you're going through this value sort of creation life cycle?
I guess you see all the good ones, Doug, is probably the way of thinking about it. And what I mean by that is, by being really focused, I would say, on your alignment to what your product strategy is to your business strategy and those things, you're going to make smart decisions about, you're going to make smart decisions that benefit customers, right? If what you're trying to do is, I want to create more value for the people who use my product, and because what I'm ultimately trying to do is make them engage for longer, I want to make them, spend more time here, I want them to view more advertising or subscribe for longer. You are creating experiences for them, which creates a connection with the product, and they'll get more value out of that. So for the consumer, you're creating that connection to your product. For your business, you are obviously having the effect on the metrics that you're trying to have that effect on. You are driving more revenue, you are driving more growth. But the way that you're really doing that is being super laser focused on, that is the outcome that I'm driving. It's not really about what feature should we build. It is about how do we drive the consumer behavior and the business outcome, which are all aligned along those things. And actually, to some extent, the customer goodness can almost flow from that. Now, there will be times when there's tension. There will be times when there are some things you can do to just drive revenue that consumers don't like. And then to some extent, I think that's when organizations have principles, right, of their product, and it's sort of which comes over what sort of thing in terms of when you have to make those choices.
And how do you keep driving change profitably, but keeping control of the cost base? Because that's obviously the other really big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think perhaps I mean I can't talk for all kinds of other organisations, but I do sometimes wonder if we as product people have got enough of a handle on the cost of some of the things that we're generating. And I think, to me that's really important, and I've always strongly encouraged my team to have a handle on both of the aspects, because really what you're doing is you've got to understand what is the P&L impact you're almost having on the organization with all of the choices that you make. So you need to kind of establish as quickly and as rapidly as possible, what are the benefits that I believe any particular initiative is going to bring, right, towards these outcomes, the ones that you've, in your product strategy that everyone's signed up to are kind of there. But also you need to sort of understand the costs, right? And so before those costs become big costs, like by which you mean you're taking things to production, you need to be learning rapidly. This is where your discovery processes and your experimentation culture that are all kind of core part of learning this, if you like, are really important. That will let you learn and understand those things at a lower risk before you're generating more cost. And then I think it's also important. Also, I think as product people, we get a bit obsessed with the release, right? We get a bit obsessed with getting it out there. But almost as important, and what I was always at pains with my teams, is to continue to understand and learn once these things are in the wild. How are they? How are they doing? Are they doing as well as we ever thought they were doing? How do we continue to judge, if you like, their performance, both in terms of what we thought they were going to do to what they are doing? And so what that meant is we were building, a backlog, if you like, of understanding, and what that meant, and what's really helpful about that understanding backlog, is then when you're going into conversations with, we've all had conversations at board level or wherever about justification for investment, or the value of product to the organisation. You've built your data points and your case studies, if you like, about here's how the product has invested, and here's the outcomes of the business that have been successful. It also means that you've got a body of learning that as you look forward, you're actually better to predict some of the changes that you can make going forward. So you can be more confident about, well, we did these things, and therefore actually this indicates we can have this kind of impact, and therefore here we can go further and we can potentially have more impact, that sort of thing. So it sort of works in all ways. I think it's just a really important discipline to get into, to sort of understand the cost and benefit of everything that you're doing and be able to play that forward.
Yeah, so you've talked about creating a body of evidence where you can prove the value to business KPIs to the board. Is that, how sort of key is that? How often do you have to do that, or in your experience?
Yeah, in my experience, every time I sat down for a financial planning cycle, Doug, right? Because somebody with a checkbook that wasn't big enough for what everybody wanted was trying to decide where should we invest. An organizations have some kind of finite funding, whatever sort of size they are. There's always an envelope, and there's always choices, and normally we're all asking for too much. So it's about helping the people who are, whether that's your CFO or your COO, or wherever that decision making is holding. It's like you're recommending to them, if I make this investment, I can generate this kind of return. And how do they weigh that up against other investments that they can make in sales and marketing or wherever else they want to do that? So that's sort of how I've used that kind of thing before, and it's been very powerful.
Well, I guess the stronger your track record, the more likely they are to believe your sort of future predictions, so to speak. And
exactly. And I think it's important to, as with all things, base that on data. And if you're basing those on data and facts, you're in a much stronger position for the argument, right?
Well, particularly with financial people, I think. So
particularly, yes.
I think we've nearly kind of come to the end on timing as well, Dave. Is there any sort of final points, or is there anything I've missed that you just wanted to cover, or?
I think we've touched on the main things. I think just to summarize, it really is this close alignment, if you like, between your understanding of where the business is trying to get to, and therefore your product strategy and service of that. And being clear and aligned, I guess, across the organization with the outcomes and I think then you're in really good stead of that driving value. And I think, as we all, the golden age is coming, but the golden age hasn't been here for a little bit, and organizations have got really focused on understanding where their costs are and understanding the benefit and impact of everything they're doing on the organization. And I think that's sort of really important, I would say, always. And I just think it's become more sharply in focus over the past period.
It certainly has done. Dave, thank you very, very much for your time. That was really, really good. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
All right. We'll speak to you soon. And yeah, I'd like to thank all three of our guests, Ed Bidens, Martin Rober-Parks, and also Dave Cameron. I think just as a recap, it looks like the product managers need to learn AI. Martin seems very confident about the rise of product ops and that fractional roles are here to stay. And Dave was talking about, I think, continuous innovation and the need to drive habits to get business benefits seem to be the main takeaways for me. I'd like to thank everybody else for just tuning in today. Please go and look at our website for any jobs. It's intelligentpeople.co.uk. And I hope to see you again in a few weeks. Thank you.